5 years. That's how long it had been since they last saw each other. 5 years of silence, heartache, and unanswered questions. But now, standing face to face in a bustling cafe on a rainy afternoon, neither of them could look away. The air between them felt heavy, charged with emotions that time hadn't managed to erase. He was different, taller, sharper, his presence commanding as always, but there was something softer about him too, something she couldn't quite place. And her, she looked radiant, confident, like someone who had weathered every storm life threw at her and come out stronger. As their eyes locked across the room, one thought echoed in his mind. Asterisk, what have I done? Asterisk, theirs wasn't just any love story. It was the kind people whispered about, the passionate highs, the devastating lows, and ultimately the unraveling no one saw coming. Back then, he was Alex Carter, the ambitious CEO climbing the corporate ladder faster than anyone else in the industry. She was Emily Dawson, an artist whose creativity lit up even the darkest corners of his life. Together, they were fire and ice, two worlds colliding yet somehow finding balance. Or so they thought. Their marriage ended not with a bang, but with a quiet surrender, worn down by arguments over dreams that never aligned and promises that went unfulfilled. When the papers were signed, Alex convinced himself it was for the best. But deep down, buried beneath layers of pride and regret, he knew he'd made a mistake that haunted him more with each passing year. Now here they were, reunited under circumstances neither of them expected. It wasn't fate or coincidence that brought them together. This time it was business. Emily had built herself a new life after the divorce, channeling her pain into her art until her work caught the attention of collectors worldwide. Her latest exhibition had drawn interest from none other than Alex's company, which specialized in luxury branding partnerships. She hadn't known when she agreed to meet with their representative that it would be him walking through the door. And Alex? Well, Alex hadn't known what to expect either. All he knew was that seeing her again would stir up feelings. He'd spent years trying to bury Dot as Emily approached the table where Alex sat waiting, her heels clicking softly against the tiled floor. She felt a strange mix of emotions swirling inside her. Part of her wanted to turn around and leave to avoid the memories and the lingering ache of what they once shared. But another part of her, a deeper part, wanted answers. Why had he agreed to handle this meeting personally? Was it purely professional? Or was there something more? For a moment, neither of them spoke. They simply stood there, taking each other in, the weight of their history pressing down on them like an invisible force. You look good, Alex finally said, breaking the silence. His voice was calm, measured, but there was a vulnerability in his eyes that betrayed him. Thanks, Emily replied coolly, sliding into the seat across from him. You haven't changed much. It was a lie, and they both knew it. Everything about him seemed harder now, more polished, as if the years had stripped away the softer edges of the man she used to know. And yet, there was still something undeniably familiar about him, something that tugged at her heart, despite everything. They exchanged pleasantries, discussing the weather and the traffic like strangers making small talk. But beneath the surface, the tension was palpable. Every word carried undertones of what they weren't saying. Every glance hinted at unresolved feelings. Alex struggled to focus on the agenda in front of him, his mind drifting back to the countless nights he'd lain awake, wondering where it all went wrong. Did she ever think about him? Did she hate him? These questions gnawed at him constantly, but he'd never allowed himself to ask them out loud until now. So, Emily began, cutting through his thoughts. What exactly does your company want from me? Her tone was polite but distant, a clear indication that she wasn't going to let him off easy. Alex cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. This wasn't just a business meeting anymore, it was personal, whether either of them liked it or not. We're interested in collaborating with you, he explained, forcing himself to sound professional. Your work has gained significant recognition, and we believe it aligns perfectly with our brand values. Emily raised an eyebrow, studying him carefully. And why are you handling this directly? Surely someone of your stature has better things to do than negotiate with artists. Her words hit him like a punch to the gut. There it was, the underlying bitterness he'd been dreading. He deserved it, of course, but hearing it aloud stung more than he cared to admit. I wanted to oversee this project myself, he admitted, choosing his words carefully. Your talent speaks for itself, Emily. I didn't trust anyone else to do it justice. For a brief moment, their gazes met, and something unspoken passed between them. It was almost as if the years melted away, leaving only the raw truth of what they'd lost. But just as quickly, Emily looked away, her expression unreadable. Well, flattery won't get you very far, she said lightly, though her voice wavered ever so slightly. Let's stick to the details, shall we? As they dove into the specifics of the proposal, Alex couldn't help but marvel at how effortlessly she commanded the conversation. She was poised, intelligent, and completely unfazed by his attempts to steer things back toward safer territory. It was infuriating and utterly captivating. By the end of the meeting, he realized he hadn't just walked into a negotiation. He'd stepped into a battlefield. But the real test came when Emily leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms as she fixed him with a piercing stare. Before we proceed, she said slowly, I need to know something. Are you doing this because you genuinely believe in my work, or because you're trying to make amends for the past? Her question hung in the air like a challenge, daring him to answer honestly. Alex hesitated, his mind racing. How could he possibly put into words the guilt and longing that had driven him to seek her out? That's a complicated question, he murmured, avoiding her gaze. Maybe it's a little of both. Emily sighed, shaking her head. Complicated doesn't even begin to cover it, Alex. Before he could respond, her phone buzzed loudly on the table, interrupting the moment. Glancing at the screen, she frowned and gathered her things. I'm sorry, but I have to go. We'll continue this discussion another time. And just like that, she was gone, leaving him sitting alone with nothing but his thoughts and the lingering scent of her perfume. As he watched her disappear into the crowd outside, one thing became painfully clear. 5 years may have passed, but the connection between them was far from broken. If anything, it burned brighter than ever. The question was, what would he do about it? Could he find a way to bridge the gap between them, or was it already too late? One thing was certain, he couldn't let her slip away again without a fight. But winning her trust wouldn't be easy, especially when the wounds of their past ran so deep as the rain continued to fall outside. Alex found himself staring at the empty chair across from him, replaying their conversation over and over in his mind. Somewhere in the distance, a clock chimed, marking the passage of time. Time he couldn't afford to waste. Whatever happened next, one thing was sure. This reunion was only the beginning of a journey neither of them was prepared for. The days following their unexpected meeting were a blur for Alex. He couldn't shake the image of Emily walking away, her silhouette fading into the rain-soaked streets. Every time he closed his eyes, He saw her face calm, but guarded, as if she'd built walls so high that no one could ever scale them again. And maybe she had. After all, he was the one who'd helped construct those barriers 5 years ago. Divorce hadn't just ended their marriage. It had severed something deeper, something neither of them fully understood at the time. Now sitting in his sleek office overlooking the city skyline, Alex realized how much he didn't know about the woman she'd become. Emily, on the other hand, wasn't letting herself dwell on their encounter. Or at least, that's what she told herself. Her life after the divorce had been a whirlwind of reinvention. She poured everything into her art, her pain, her anger, her hope, and, slowly, piece by piece, she rediscovered who she was outside of their failed relationship. But seeing Alex again stirred up emotions she thought she'd buried long ago. It wasn't just regret or sadness, it was frustration, too. Frustration with herself for still caring, even after all this time. That night, as she sat alone in her studio surrounded by half-finished canvases, she wondered why fate insisted on bringing him back into her orbit. Wasn't once enough? Their next meeting came sooner than either of them anticipated. Alex called her personally, bypassing assistants and formalities, claiming they needed to finalize the details of the partnership quickly. Emily hesitated before agreeing, unsure if she was ready to face him again so soon. Yet curiosity got the better of her. What did he really want? Business was the excuse, but there was an undercurrent to his words of desperation she recognized all too well. This time, they met at a quiet gallery downtown, where Emily's latest collection was being showcased. The space was intimate, filled with soft lighting and echoes of classical music playing faintly in the background. As Alex walked through the exhibit, his breath caught in his throat. Each painting seemed to tell a story, one of loss, resilience, and ultimately, triumph. There was a raw honesty in her work that struck him deeply, almost painfully. He found himself lingering in front of a particular piece, a stormy seascape with jagged rocks jutting out against crashing waves. Something about it felt hauntingly familiar. That one's called Fractured, Emily said, startling him as she appeared beside him. It's about breaking apart and finding strength in the chaos. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of vulnerability. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Alex nodded slowly, his gaze still fixed on the painting. "It's beautiful," he murmured, "but also painful." She laughed softly, though it lacked humor. "Isn't that how most things worth creating are?" Their conversation shifted then, moving beyond business and delving into territory neither of them had planned to explore. They talked about her journey, the late nights spent painting until her hands cramped, the rejections that nearly broke her spirit, and the eventual breakthroughs that changed everything. Alex listened intently, marveling at how far she'd come without him. At the same time, guilt gnawed at him. Had he been part of the reason she struggled so much in the beginning? Could he have supported her differently if he hadn't been so consumed with his own ambitions? "I'm sorry," he blurted out suddenly, cutting her off mid-sentence. His words hung in the air, heavy and unfiltered. "For everything I should have been there for you when you needed me." Emily froze, caught off guard by his admission. For years, she'd imagined hearing those words from him, dreamed of the closure they might bring. But now, standing here, she wasn't sure what to feel. Anger, relief, both. Instead of responding, she turned away, pretending to adjust the lighting above another painting. "You don't get to apologize now," she said finally, her voice tight. Not after all this time. Her words stung, but Alex knew she was right. Apologies couldn't rewrite the past, no matter how sincere they were. Still, he pressed on. I don't expect forgiveness, he admitted, but I need you to know that I regret losing you more than anything else in my life. There it was, the truth laid bare between them. Emily stared at him, searching his face for any sign of insincerity. All she found was honesty, plain and unguarded. It terrified her because, despite everything, a small part of her wanted to believe him. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed again, pulling her back to reality. This time, it was her assistant reminding her of a meeting with potential buyers, interested in acquiring several pieces from the exhibit. Reluctantly, she excused herself, leaving Alex standing amidst her artwork like a man lost in a labyrinth of memories. As the days passed, their interactions became more frequent, each conversation unraveling another layer of their shared history. Subplots began weaving themselves into the narrative rumors within. Alex's company about his sudden interest in collaborating with an artist. Whispers among Emily's friends questioning whether she was setting herself up for heartbreak again. Meanwhile, both of them grappled with their own internal conflicts. Alex wrestled with guilt and the fear of rejection, while Emily battled the urge to trust him again versus protecting herself from further pain. Tension reached its peak. During a charity gala hosted by Alex's firm, Emily attended reluctantly, knowing it would be impossible to avoid him entirely. The event was glamorous, filled with champagne glasses clinking and laughter echoing off marble floors. Yet none of it mattered once their paths crossed again. Standing under the glittering chandeliers, they exchanged heated glances across the crowded room, unable to ignore the magnetic pull drawing them together. When Alex finally approached her, his expression was unreadable. "We can't keep doing this," he said quietly, his tone laced with urgency. "Running into each other, pretending it's only about business. It's not fair to either of us." Emily's heart raced, torn between wanting to run and needing to hear whatever he had to say next. "Then what do you suggest?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Maybe we owe it to ourselves to figure out if there's still something worth saving." The room seemed to spin around her as his meaning sank in. Was he suggesting what she thought he was? Before she could respond, a commotion erupted. Nearby, interrupting the moment, a spotlight shattered unexpectedly, plunging part of the venue into darkness. In the chaos that followed, Emily slipped away, leaving Alex standing alone, his question unanswered now. As the night wore on and the crowd dispersed, uncertainty loomed larger than ever. Neither of them knew what the future held or if they were brave enough to find out. One thing was certain: the unresolved tension between them was reaching a breaking point. Whatever happened next would change everything for better or worse. The next morning, Emily woke up to a text from Alex. "We need to talk. Meet me at the park where we used to walk." Her heart sank as she read it. That park held so many memories, lacy Sunday strolls, whispered promises, and dreams they once shared. Going back there felt like stepping into a time machine, one she wasn't sure she was ready to board. But she knew she couldn't ignore him forever. If nothing else, she owed it to herself to hear him out one last time. When she arrived, Alex was already there, sitting on their favorite bench overlooking the pond. He looked different, somehow less polished, more vulnerable. As she approached, he stood up, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. "I didn't mean to spring that on you last night," Alex said finally, breaking the quiet. "It's just, I've spent 5 years wondering what could have been if I hadn't let you go. And now that you're here again, I can't shake the feeling that maybe we still have a chance." Emily crossed her arms, her defenses rising instinctively. "A chance for what, Alex?" "To pick up where we left off. Things aren't the same anymore." "We're not the same people, I know," he admitted quickly. "And I'm not asking to turn back the clock. All I'm saying is, maybe we owe it to ourselves to try. You've built this incredible life for yourself, and I've learned things about myself I never would have discovered without losing you. Maybe together we can create something new." His words caught her off guard. She'd expected excuses, pleas for forgiveness, or even attempts to manipulate her emotions. But this felt genuine. Still, fear gripped her. What if they tried and failed again? Could she survive losing him twice? Before she could respond, Alex reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "This isn't why I asked you here," he said, handing it to her. "But I think you should see it." Curious, Emily opened the envelope and found a folded piece of paper inside. Unfolding it, she realized it was a sketchier rough drawing of the two of them standing side by side, smiling. Beneath it were the words, "Together again. I drew it after our first meeting." Alex explained, his voice tinged with nervousness. "I wasn't planning to show it to you, but I guess I wanted you to know how much I've thought about us since then." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she stared at the drawing. It was clumsy compared to her own artistic skill, but it carried a raw sincerity that touched her deeply. For the first time, she allowed herself to consider the possibility that maybe, just maybe, they weren't doomed to repeat their past mistakes. "Alex," she began, her voice trembling, "I don't know if we can fix everything that broke between us, but if we're going to try, it has to be real this time. No distractions, no running away when things get hard. Just honesty and a lot of patience." He nodded earnestly, relief washing over his face. "That's all I want. Whatever happens, I promise I'll fight for us this time." With those words, something shifted. The weight of their history didn't disappear, never would, but it no longer felt like an insurmountable barrier. Instead, it became a foundation, a reminder of how far they'd come individually and what they might achieve together. Over the following weeks, they took tentative steps toward rebuilding their connection. They met regularly, sometimes talking for hours about their lives post-divorce, other times simply enjoying each other's company in comfortable silence. Slowly, trust began to grow again, brick by fragile brick. Along the way, subplots unfolded. Emily's art gained even more recognition thanks to the partnership with Alex's company, while rumors within his firm about their renewed relationship forced him to confront lingering doubts about prioritizing love over ambition. Each challenge only strengthened their resolve. The climax came during Emily's biggest exhibition yet, a showcase titled *Rebirth. The centerpiece was a massive canvas depicting two figures emerging from shadows into light, symbolizing healing and second chances. As guests marveled at the work, Alex stood quietly in the corner, watching Emily greet admirers with confidence and grace. When the crowd thinned, he approached her, holding a single red rose. "This is amazing," he said softly, handing her the flower. "You've always had this ability to turn pain into beauty." She smiled, her eyes glistening with emotion. "Not just me. You helped inspire this, whether you realize it or not. In that moment, surrounded by the fruits of their individual journeys, they shared a kiss, a quiet, tender gesture that spoke volumes. It wasn't perfect, and it certainly wasn't easy, but it was real, and sometimes that's enough. As the story concluded, viewers were left reflecting on themes of redemption, growth, and the courage it takes to embrace second chances. Alex and Emily's journey reminded them that while the past shapes us, it doesn't define us. With effort and understanding, even the most fractured relationships can find new life. Their happily ever after wasn't guaranteed, but it was theirs to build one honest moment at a time.